Hello, let's look at what's a variable in C++ today. So as you can see on my screen, variable is a named place in a computer's memory. So what it means is we have to reserve a place in memory of a computer and we give it a name. That's what a variable name is. So variable name is nothing but a container or a storage location inside the memory of a computer. So whenever you are declaring a variable, unlike Python, as you see in the screen, Python, we just use variable name equal to Python, and it will automatically create a space in memory and it will store the value Python in it. But in C++, it's different. In C++, we have to give what's the type of the variable we are going to use. So in our case, we are going to declare a string. So we have to mention string and then name equal to C++. So that's called explicit declaration. So we have to mention explicitly that this value is being stored and this is the name of the variable we are going to use. So there are multiple things when you are going to declare a variable. So one is the type. You have to mention what is the type of data that you are going to put in the box. So for example, it can be an integer, double, and string. So based on what kind of data you are going to put in your memory, it will allocate different sizes of locations. So int needs lesser amount of space than double, and string, based on the length of the string, you need more space. So you have to declare what type it is. Then next is the name of, that is the identifier. That is what's the name you are going to give to your variable. Then you assign a value to it. This is called, the equal to symbol is called the assignment operator. Using this assignment operator, you move the data into the box. So whatever you put on the right over here, in this example, you have C++, the string C++, that will be moved into a variable named name. And you end it with a semicolon. So every statement in C++ has to end with a semicolon. Next, let's look at few more examples. If you are going to declare a string, we use std : because it's a part of the standard directory. So standard header file. So string name equal to C++. If you are going to declare a integer, int number equal to 100. So when you say int number equal to 100, there in the memory, the compiler is going to reserve some space and it's going to give the name number to it, and it's going to store the value 100 inside it. And in case of this double, we use it to store numbers which have decimal points. So you declare double miles equal to 1000. So 1000.0 is going to be stored in a space called miles. You can declare a variable in any place inside the program, but it has to be declared before you use it. Before you store a value, it has to be declared. There are different data types in C++. Integer, as you know, any whole number is an integer. And a float. Float allocates a certain amount of space if it has a decimal place. But when you look at double and float, they both store numbers with decimal points. But the difference in this is double allocates more space than float. So in our case, if it's a regular number, we usually use float. But if we are using scientific numbers with an exponential, we usually go for double. Then Boolean. Boolean is a data type which can store only two values, either true or a false. So if you store 0 in it, that means false. And if it is a 1, that is true. Then we store character. Character is any character on the keyboard, or any of the special character can be character. Now looking at the variable names, what can be a variable name? Any name which starts with underscore is invalid. So we cannot start. We can start with an underscore. We cannot start with a number. We can have underscore special characters like at, dollar, or percentage. These are the ones which are not allowed. Underscore is allowed, but these are not allowed. And the variable name is case sensitive. That means if you give a name lowercase age for a variable name, and then you try to use uppercase A and GE, then these two will be considered two separate variables. Same as all uppercase AG will be a different variable. So all three of them will be three different variables. So you have to make sure that you are taking into consideration if there's any uppercase letter in it. And in C++, all the keywords, if, class, return, none, true, false, these are all the keywords in C++. They cannot be used as variable names. Here's some of the keywords which are available in C++. ASM, double, new, switch. So when you go over, you can just look up this, print it out, and keep it. So otherwise, even C++ compiler will give you an error message saying, okay, you cannot use this as a variable name. Now let's look at an example. Let's write a program and see how we can use this. I'm using Visual Studio and I create a new file and I give it a name, but text file. Okay, so we are going to create a new file. And when I create a file, I'll make sure that it is a C++ file. So this is all files. So this way, if I create a save as type this, it will not, though it will give me error. So variable already exists. Do you want to replace it? No. So I have to create something different, variable. So if you look at this, I've created a file called variable1, but it doesn't have the extension C++. So I'll write the program and show you what's the error that comes up if you are writing it in this way. So the first statement in your program has to be a hash include. This hash include IO stream. So this gives this tells the C++ compiler that we are going to use a header file called IOStream. For this, IO stands for input and output. For input and output functions, we'll be using the IOStream operations. The next thing I'm going to do is using namespaces. Using namespace tells the compiler that I'm going to use this library in my program. Every statement has to end with a semicolon. Now, while writing the main function, it's always, unlike in Python, here we always need to use a main function to write whatever code we write, it has to be inside the function. So when compiler runs, it looks for a function called main. So that's why our function's name has to be main. So a main function returns an integer. So I'll write it as main integer. And everything inside the function has to go inside the curly braces. So I put the curly brace. And what this means over here is int int is what is returned by the main function. The main function returns something, and that is of the integer type. So since it's expecting that something is going to be returned, we have to use a return, and return something. We'll be returning 0 in our case, because it has to be, it doesn't have to be 0. You can put anything you want, and that's the basic things we need to remember. Now, in our case, I'm going to declare a variable called int, and my integer is called, maybe I'm going to use it to calculate the length. Okay. And I assign a value in this case as 4, semicolon at the end of this. So what I'm telling the compiler that please reserve a location in the memory. I'm going to store integer in it, and the name of that location is length, and initializing, that is, I'm initially storing the value 4 in it. Now, once we have that, we can declare other variables as well. If you have multiple variables, you can use a comma in between, comma, and width. I have a width, and I'm assigning the width as 7. And I want to use another variable which I don't want to assign a value, because it's going to have a value which is being calculated later. So for example, in this, I'm going to use a variable called area. But I'm not going to put a value, because what happens in this case is it will create a space in memory called area, but there won't be any value stored. There will be a value stored, but it will be a junk value. I'll show you what it would be storing later. Now, what's the next thing I want to do? I want to calculate area. So area is equal to length multiplication and then width, and with a semicolon. Let's try running the program. I wanted to show you what happens when you try to run a program. I don't even have the run button. Okay, it's over here, run and debug. I'll run and debug. But it gives me an error because this has to be saved. So I go to File and I have to save the file as not as a plain text, but as a C++ file. And I'm going to store it in a folder which I have created for our class and open. So it would be, now you can see my file name is variable_1.cpp. And if you notice, there is a debug button which came over here when let's debug it and see. It did everything it needed to do. But what happens is it didn't print anything because I didn't tell it to print. So to make it to print, I'll be using cout end it with a semicolon. Let's try running it now. It printed area is 28, 7 times 4. So that's how you run your program. I wanted to show you one more thing, using namespaces. You can skip this, but what happens if you don't use using namespaces is, I'll comment this for the time being and show you what happens. If I don't add using namespace, that when I put it in comment, that means that particular statement is not going to be executed. Now, when I run this program, it's giving me error. Okay, let's go to the error. It says cout undeclared. That means it's not able to find where to look for cout. So the solution for this is I use std. I tell it, look in the standard library, which is called std. Now, if I run it, it will give me, okay, it was able to run.